Hey now, welcome to America's leading Formula One podcast. It's the dirty side of the track. I'm Brian Saperstein, and with me as always is Rob Vale. Rob, what's good, my friend?
Well, what's good seems to be the reaction to last week's show and having our guest Paul on. It was it was fantastic to speak to him, and I think we managed to resist fanboying too much over having a real life Formula One. But we've had a really good reaction. It's been pretty good watching kind of the downloads go up and a little bit more interaction on social media as well. In fact, so much so I'd like to do a social shout out. First off, and I don't really know these two first guys at all, but I'm just going to shout them out because they seem to have kind of been following us since the beginning. So over on Facebook, on our Facebook page, Dirty Side of the Track on Facebook, for people that want to follow along, is a guy called Mac Roy. And he's kind of followed us right from the beginning. And I'm shouting him out because he's like the first one outside of our friends and family that actually became a real life follower.
Love it.
Yeah, exactly. And then also through, we use Buzzsprout to publish this podcast. And through that community, I kind of hooked up this guy called Nick Demkowski, which I've probably murdered the pronunciation of. But he's got a podcast. He listened to ours. He's following the show, and he's giving us some good feedback on, how we're doing. So I'd like to give a shout out to those two. The last one is a social shout out, but real life social, as in my neighbor. I wasn't going to shout this out, Brian, but I'm going to have to. So my neighbor and friend, Mr. Jim Moyer, is a Brian Soundclip fan. You've got
leave me alone. I know what to do.
Yeah, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I told you I know what I'm doing over here.
I have to give him I was there thinking, he actually said he was disappointed last week that although the interview was fantastic, I think you only managed to get one sound clip in there. So at least you've already matched that already in this episode. So I've
got a bunch more queued up, Jim. I appreciate your feedback, and it's great to have you in the fold, my friend. I look forward to meeting you one day, and we can maybe have the drink.
You will not have the drink.
Oh, maybe not. We'll see.
What about you? What's caught your eye on social this week?
Well, as always, love checking out team radio. Obviously, it's more exciting when there's a race as opposed to historical. But I did catch 3 or 4 things on YouTube, Twitter, and so on that I wanted to highlight. One is F1 2021, an unforgettable season. It's a YouTube video that Formula One did looking back. And they started off with this really kind of, poorly lit boxing montage. And they wanted to really highlight the back and forth between Max and Lewis. And it got me thinking, Formula One drivers are fairly fit, somewhat muscular, but they don't want to have too much weight up top because of the G's the car pulls. And so who would win in a boxing match? They kind of, accidentally proposed a question. And as I thought about it, watching this, I said, who would actually win if you got 20 of these drivers, light, fit, trim guys in a ring punching each other in the face for real? Who's going to actually, I think, come out on top?
So with that, are you talking 20 of them going through some kind of boxing round robin format, or are you talking 20 of them in like a WWE Royal Rumble style?
Round robin, not okay. Round robin. Right? Yeah, you can't have Max holding a chair and coming running in on top of 8 different guys. No, I and again, just to be abundantly clear, it was about 30 seconds of the intro setup, and then they went into the actual season. It was not a Formula One driver, but I started thinking socially, who would win in this round robin? So I'd love your thoughts, Rob, because I know the answer. I have, of course, the correct answer, but you can give me your incorrect one.
Well, okay. Well, my incorrect answer will be, because like you say, none of them appear overly muscular. Therefore, I think Danny Rick is one of the tallest ones. So on reach alone, I'm going to go for Danny Rick.
I have it written here. I have Daniel Ricciardo as well. I feel like he's a little older. He's a little more wild. I feel like he's probably able to take a couple punches to the face. I wanted to say George because he always has his shirt off and he's really ripped. But I feel like a couple shots to the kisser, and all of a sudden George may rethink the whole boxing match idea. And
yeah, he's going down.
I feel like there's something to be said for old man strength. And so and Danny Rick's not old, but I had Fernando as my sort of backup. I sort of figured, because he's shorter than a lot of people give credit for, and he's a lot more compact. So while reach wouldn't be his strength, I feel like it would be Danny or Fernando. I don't know. We'd love to hear what everyone else thinks in terms of who may win a round robin F1 boxing match. So please, as always, hit us on social, and the Twitter one, which is one of the easier ones to do, is at F1 Dirty Side. We'd love to know what you guys think. The second social really fast that I saw that was great was Williams. And so they launched something called the Handover. And it was George and Alex. And as I think everybody knows, we've mentioned, they seem to be friends outside the track. And so George kind of gave Alex gifts, and it was neat. He had like a card that said Albano and all the stuff, his Williams card and all these other things. But the end was the best because it was jeans and sunglasses. And Alex goes, "Good, you don't need a shirt because you're always topless, George." And I would just, if people want to have fun and go back in time and see some really great stuff of people just hanging out. When they were rookies a few years ago, Alex, Lando, and George got into a conference room and debated who should win Rookie of the Year. And it was the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. So socially, if people want to go check that out, I'd recommend it. And my last thing that was a retro. I went back a little bit. The 2020 British Grand Prix, Silverstone. That's when Lewis's front left tire delaminated and was flopping around for almost the entire last lap. And they actually have, Formula One has, and I had not seen it, Lewis Hamilton's tire drama in full, with radio. It was fantastic from the 2020 British Grand Prix. It's on YouTube. It's from the Formula One channel. Check it out. It's tense. It's wild. It's what really makes Formula One fun. Some of my friends have said, all too often the races finish with such a large gap between the winner and the second place driver and even the entire podium. That wasn't that. So in 2021 had very little of that, but I'd say 2020, check out that clip. It was really great.
Just to be clear on the handover of the jeans, I mean, you say jeans, but they were those skinny white things, right?
Of course, yeah.
They weren't like masculine blue jeans.
No,
those...
Albon looked at these things like, what am I going to do with these? And then, one other note while we're kind of just going around the order here, doing a little track walk. I mentioned this very briefly last week when we had Paul on, and you got a chance to thank Paul. I want to thank him as well. He was amazing, and it was so great. And I really, 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 really hope we can have him back again. But I mentioned this. I was in Miami for vacation, and or at least the Miami area. And I convinced my wife and one of my kids to kind of drive along with us and go check out where the track's going to be. And it is so cool to kind of watch them build an F1 track. And we're driving along. I'm like, this has to be part of it. Now, I didn't have the map with me at the time, so I got to come home and kind of compare it. It looks like it's going to be counterclockwise, or for Rob, anti-clockwise. Is that what you would?
That's right.
Yeah, it's counterclockwise.
No, anti-clockwise is correct. Well done.
Now, this is America's leading Formula One podcast. It's counterclockwise.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
3 nice straights, all with DRS. And as I'd mentioned, if you come from the south on Florida Turnpike, you'll actually go up and over the track. I highly recommend it. For any fans in the area, please go check it out. It's brilliant. So you go up and over. As soon as you do that, look to your left, and you're going to see turns 11 through 16 right underneath you, under construction. They're putting some gentle banking in. You can kind of check that out. It's really neat. And what you do then, if you want to get even closer, is circle around the stadium and stay circling around it, also counterclockwise. And then as you're doing this, you're going to get near the Dolphins training complex, and you pull in past there, ignore the 330-pound men telling you you're going the wrong way. And you're going to come right up to turn 17, which is the back straight. And it is a really tight looking hairpin, or as Antonio Giovinazzi would tell Kimi Räikkönen,
It's an hairpin, eh? No, really, that one is an hairpin. Now, hairpin.
You could tell he was getting nervous in that. I love at the end, hairpin, slow down, Kimi. And so anyway, the Miami track looks great. I'm optimistic that maybe Rob and I can either make it to Miami or Austin this year to bring the dirty side of the track on the road. But looks amazing.
We've mentioned that a couple of times, and yes, this is not any attempt at some kind of subliminal messaging. If there really is anybody out there that can make it happen, then Brian and I would graciously accept any flights, race tickets, press passes, anything that's going, and we're going to be there.
Exactly.
Anyway, it's a good segue talking about Miami because that's a new track for 2022, which brings us to, I guess, the bulk of today's episode, which is all about looking forward to 2022. So I think we're going to break it down into two bits, right? We've got our predictions, which are going to be absolutely crystal ball accurate. And and then we're going to take a little bit of a walk through what's all the fuss about these new cars and why is it going to be the best season ever.
Can't wait to do that. And just as a heads up for everyone for next week, in case you can't make it to the end when we highlight this, Fantasy Formula One is going to be a big part of the dirty side of the track. So check out how we're going to give a little primer next week, as well as hitting a historical driver highlight and a couple other really amazing things for next week. So please be prepared for more awesomeness next week. But now I actually have some predictions. And so what I'm going to do, because I don't do anything traditionally, I'm going to give you the answer. And Rob, if you can guess the question, then great. If you can't, that's okay as well. So here we go. 2022 predictions. I'll give a couple first. Here we go. A goat, a sheep, and a raccoon.
You want me to do a Jeopardy style?
Do you have a question? Yeah. Do you have a question for it?
What collection of animals would make a really rubbish zoo?
Things more likely than Nikita Mazepin to get a podium in 2022.
Oh, that's mean. That's just mean.
That's all right. He's a big boy. He's got a lot of money. All right, here we go. One more. You ready? I got a couple more here.
Go on.
Paulie Walnuts, Big Pussy Boppin' and Christopher Moltisanti. I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Question?
Names you just made up.
No, you're not a Sopranos guy. These are people less likely to get whacked than Yuki Tsunoda and AlphaTauri's second seat at the end of 2022. I think it's Yuki's last year in F1, and I think he's got a higher chance of getting whacked than those guys from the Sopranos. You're not a Sopranos guy?
Is it going to be bad if I say I've never seen an episode?
We may have to cancel the podcast right now. We'll just do a crash course. Okay, I've got another one. See if you can improve your batting average. If Teddy KGB from Rounders were a race driver and I had his team audio and it was this. Very aggressive. Very aggressive. What's the question?
What's the view of any corner that Max takes?
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. That's amazing. The answer, the question is, what is it like to drive against Max Verstappen? So I will take that. Very good. Very impressive. Another one here, 2022. The answer is the under cabinet lights in my former upstairs neighbor's apartment. Yeah, you're making a face. That's a hard one.
I don't want to know why you know that.
Things that will get sacrificed to make the Miami GP a success. I mean, if they don't play that sound through the entire Miami GP, they have done it 100,000% wrong. That gets me amped up. There should be Phil Collins jamming. I want to hear Jan Hammer's music there. I know who made that. And the reason my upstairs neighbor's under cabinet lighting fell is there was a time in my life when I was in business school and I had a little extra time on my hands. And I loved me some Miami Vice. And I bought the DVD set and I had this big set of speakers and a subwoofer. And I would play the theme song at volume that was just ungodly, just so loud. And one day she was home during the day. I didn't know this. And I got a knock on my door in the middle of my Miami Vice episode. And she said, "Hey, you don't really have to turn it down. I'm not that kind of neighbor. But the under cabinet lighting, the glass covers are falling out and shattering on my counter because the bass is so loud." And I said, "Oh, I feel very badly." And I went and popped mine out and gave them to her. I said, "And then I'm so sorry, I'll turn it down." But that's what Miami Vice can do. And if they don't use the Miami Vice music at the Miami GP, then they are doing it wrong, man.
Just knowing the way that TV producers are, you can guarantee that is the music they're going to start that with. It just has to be. It has to be.
There has to be cigarette boat and the flamingos. I mean, they need the whole deal.
And I want Johnny Herbert doing the track. I want the track walk in the white suit.
Totally.
Black,
All right.
black t-shirt, white suit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pink, like a pink t-shirt. And then,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you need some sandals that are made out of wicker looking things. Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, and me without my negative 9.5 prescription contacts in. What's the question?
Now, I'm going to be brutally honest, and you accidentally shared this one with me, but I think I would have guessed it anyway. These are things more likely to see the correct outcome of a race than Michael Massey.
That is correct. People who can do a better job than Michael Massey as race director, and everyone says he's a great guy, but he really effed up the last two races. So I'm sorry, can't.
I think we need to move on from that now. That's so 2021. Come on, Brian, look forward.
Yeah, that is so Raven. All right, here we go. And here's my last one like this, and then we'll get into some more straightforward predictions. 13 years too early.
I got nothing. Brian.
What Carlos Sainz will say when someone mentions the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin as he gets his first win. Because it'll only be 27. Again, I mentioned this the other week, and if we want to hit a nice little SAP stats. SAP stats. What you'll see is he has 521.5 points in F1, which is the most in history without a victory. And he's going to be 27 this year. And I'll give away part of my future predictions. I definitely think Carlos wins a race in 2022. So, Rob, I did my little sort of Karnak thing. You have some as well. I want to turn it to you because I want to hear some of your predictions as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, when you said we were going to do predictions, I probably did them properly rather than turn them into a game show. So I apologize. Mine are going to be very boring compared to yours. But
no.
But my first one is touch on exactly what you just said. I wrote down 2, then I crossed it out and I've gone to 3. And I'm saying that this season is going to say we're going to see 3 first-time winners.
3 first-time winners.
3 first-time winners. Yeah, and we'll get to the new cars and maybe why I'm ridiculously optimistic. And you'll see this as a kind of a theme through the 5 that I've got here, that if the new cars don't deliver what they're supposed to, then all 5 of they're just going to fall flat on their face.
What are you going to tell us who the 3 first-time winners are, or no? You're just going to give us a number.
I think Sainz. I think Russell.
I have Sainz. I've got Russell as well. Yeah, me too.
Come
on, you know you want to say it. I've got one more, and I know you're thinking it. Say it.
No, I wasn't going to say Mazepin.
It's broken.
I've got Lando. You don't have Lando winning this year?
I think he could. I wrote, like I said, I wrote 2, and those are my 2. And I just thought that doesn't feel enough. This is a prediction. We got to go big or go home. So I crossed my 2 out and put 3. And yeah, Lando. I think Lando. Here's one for you then. Given what we've just said about Mazepin, prediction number 2: Haas won't be bottom.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Whoa. That's a prediction, and I love it. Now,
it could be a wildly misplaced one, but
who do you have as 10th in constructors at the end of the year? And you don't have to, if you don't know.
Hold that thought until we get to the end of this, right? So if I just go through the other ones. Now, the next one is, I'd probably been drinking too much wine before heading down here to record, but here's one that is just, you got to throw a stupid one in, right? Because if it comes off, I look like an absolute kind of Nostradamus. Mercedes will not win the constructors title this year.
What has happened?
Crofty wants to know what happened. What? You don't think Mercedes wins for like the 47th time in a row?
No, and again, I'm speaking with heart rather than head, but no, I can't even say it because I'm just going to get mocked beyond belief. Oh no, that's why we throw ourselves out here, right? I'm going to say it. I can see Ferrari sneaking in, and I don't know why.
I love it. I love it so much.
Smooth operator.
I mean, I am all in on Carlos Sainz stock. I mean, I think it's rising. I love it. I think brilliant. I like that prediction a lot.
And this is all, like I say, this all hinges on the new cars doing what they're supposed to, which we'll come to. Okay, so number 4, if you look at the constructors title this year, I think has finished bottom with 0. Next one up was kind of 13 points. Next one up was 20 something. I think all constructors this year will finish on greater than 30 points.
You are really banking on this 2022 car being like a world beater.
And the final one, still based on that,
I
in
like
order to
that.
get-
I like that a lot. Hold on a second. Hold on. You just predicted that there's no like, really bottom tier sort of the last few years, Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Williams, who sat down there struggling for points. And you basically said they will be in the points more than at least a couple times.
Yeah, I'm rather than seeing this last year we've kind of had three tiers, right? Well, actually not just last year, for a long time. We got
Right.
three tiers, which have pretty much been Mercedes and Red Bull in their own tier. Then Ferrari, maybe McLaren,
Yeah.
whatever, Williams maybe now and again over the last few years. And then the rest just suck and finish like everyone. All they're ever battling over, a bit like Latifi in that final race, is 14 is a big deal, right?
Right.
Looking at the way the cars have been designed this year, if they deliver what they're supposed to deliver, I just see a bigger point spread. So I see the winning constructor not winning by a country mile like Mercedes did this year. But the flip side of that is I think more teams down the bottom will nick. I'm not saying that Haas are going to win one, but if you look at, what is it? You're going to get, I think it's 6 points for kind of like the finishing 5th, 6th, whatever it is in the race. If they can score a couple of those and consistently grab a single point here and there over the course, especially now with 23 races this year as well. I just see the points being shared around a bit more, or at least I'm really hoping they are.
I like it. I hope so too. It sounds like a brilliant season to watch. I'm excited already.
And therefore, because of that, I've also, as well as the 3 first-time winners, my last one is 5 constructors to win a race, which is McLaren, I think, are going to get one. Obviously, Mercedes and Red Bull. So they're my first 2, right?
Wait, if you say
Obviously,
McLaren is going to get one,
Yep.
Is it Danny Rick again? It's got to be Lando. And when I said
I'm
Lando's going to get his,
I'm
just making sure.
Back to Lando, right?
All right.
So I'm obviously Mercedes, obviously Red Bull. I think McLaren. I think Ferrari. And just to be,
if you say Haas, swear to God, if you say Haas, I'm disconnecting this entire podcast right now.
No, Valtteri to come in and win one for Alpha.
I love it. Of course, the sound effect has to come out. Valtteri, what'd you have for breakfast?
I had some porridge.
So for him to win, he's got to have the porridge.
Definitely. Always the porridge.
I love that. So when I looked at the constructors, I actually created a special award. You mentioned Valtteri winning. I created the Viagra Award for the biggest riser of the constructors, and I have Alfa Romeo.
We are so highbrow. We really are.
Oh, so highbrow. I don't have a sound effect for this one. Trust me. I thought about getting one. Yeah. I won't even tell you the boing. Anyway, so here we go. And then I also have the Watch Out Below Award for the most at risk of falling down the constructors. And I gave that to Alpine. And I don't know why. I want to like Alpine. We said this last time. I like Fernando. He's going to win in a boxing ring, possibly, or at least finish second. And Esteban seems like a fine kid. I don't have faith. I don't know what it is. It's a hunch. I actually picked out who I thought would win. I think Lewis will take the driver's title back in 2022. And it was interesting to me, so as we talked about this briefly, Max being on the second constructors team would be third to last introduced on all the shows because they go by constructor. So your champion will be Max, and then they'll show George and they'll show Lewis at Mercedes. But I think it's time for another SAP stat. Oh, yeah. Okay. So here's the SAP stat for that. This is the first time since 2008 where the driver's title wasn't with the Constructors' Championship. And that was also Lewis at McLaren, and Ferrari won in 2008. And before that, it was 99. It was also McLaren and Ferrari, but it was Mika Hakkinen. So it's not been often that the driver's champion isn't on the Constructors' title. But so we'll see what happens this coming year. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just digging into a couple of the things that you've raised over the last 20 minutes, I think what the listeners are really going to want to know is which one is the theme tune for SAP Stats? Is it that little diddly-did, or is it the music we had earlier on? Because you've done 2 already in one show.
I may have more. Tune. It has to be one? Why does it have to be? Everyone always says it's got to be one thing.
It's got to be one thing. If you're going to have SAP Stats be a thing, then you need people to be able to sing along. You can't do a different song.
Well, one of them's too long. I don't know. I got to figure that out. I like the little robot thing. Yeah. The radio blip. That's actually the team radio sound, but it's hard to tell with Crofty talking over it all the time. And my last one, actually, I already gave this away, but I see 7 unique race winners in 2022. at least, I have first wins for Lando and Carlos and George. So those are when you said you had three, you went 2-3. I had 3 as well. And I think we matched on those. I see Checo winning. Let's not forget how amazing Checo is in a car that I'm assuming won't be crap. I have Charles winning, and that's good for Ferrari. And your prediction as well of them going up. I have, a lot of points from Charles and Carlos. Of course, Max and Lewis, we can't ignore them. That's 7. And if anybody sneaks in from a rain fest in Hungary or a Spa weather situation, who knows? You could easily see an 8th or a 9th. But one last note around this that I'd say is SAP stats. One more is that I have is 1982 has the most unique race winners in a season at 11. And so 11 is a lot, especially even though they've expanded the calendar. We're looking at 23 races, the most ever in a Formula One season in 2022. 11 is the most to ever win. It was 1982. I can't even imagine getting past 8 or 9. So I don't think we'll touch that one. But 7 unique race winners I see at least in 2022, which is great. I think the diversity will be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that probably leads us to kind of move to the second main topic of today, right? Which is why all the fuss about the 2022 cars? Why are we all getting so excited? Why are we probably all putting far too much stock in all the reports that are coming out about what it's going to promise us? And I know a lot of people listening will already know this, but for those that don't, or those that don't really pay that much attention, the big problem that all of the cars all the way through the grid are suffering for now and probably the last 10 years, I would say, is that aerodynamics development has got so good. And these engineers are so skilled and so amazing that every single piece of bodywork and anything, even the cameras that take the pictures of the drivers above their head, everything is designed to make that car cut through the air in the most aerodynamically efficient way possible, with absolutely zero regard for what's happening to the air that they're kicking off behind them. Absolutely zero. And down the years, what that's led to is basically, we've all flown on a plane. We've all been there where the captain said there's going to be turbulence. And, what happens when an aerodynamic surface doesn't like the air that it's going through? It bounces all over the place. And that's exactly what happens on a Formula One car. When it gets too close to the car in front, that's the captain coming on the radio and telling you there's going to be turbulence. They just can't follow. You hear about that. They'll see it so many times. They try to put an attack on. They get within that zone behind the car. And after maybe 5-6 laps, they have to back off. They have to cool their tires down. And they have to go again because they just can't follow in there. And I'm sure there's some SAP stats coming up around the percentage reduction in downforce. I'm pretty sure of it.
Well, all right, there might be, Rob. We actually both found this independently. And, you mentioned something and you said it really well, is we often think that the cars are made to slice through the air with no regard to what they leave behind. However, what's really fascinating to me is the 2022 car, the way the wings, the front, the winglets, and you're going to talk about all these in the rear wing, even the way it leaves the wake behind allows cars to follow closer. So a big portion of this, yes, the car itself will cut through the air better and the ground effects and all these other things we'll talk about help. However, they're cutting through more stable air. And so really the biggest change that I've heard about is the cars leave less wake behind them. And today, or at least 2021, I should say, if you were 20 meters behind a car, it was 35% loss of downforce. And as you got closer to 10 meters behind, it was 46% loss of your downforce. So there's no way you could follow around a corner somebody that closely. You would have no downforce. You'd go flying off. You'd have to back off the throttle. However, so remember that 20 meters, 35%, and it gets worse. Obviously, the closer you get 10 meters, 46. The 2022 cars, 20 meters behind, only lose 4% of their downforce. And at 10 meters, now you're getting close, you're only losing 18%. That's half as much from half the distance. So it is just a huge difference, not necessarily in the car itself cutting through the air, but the wake that the car leaves, allowing the car behind you to get closer. So we talk about 2022, the thing that always blew my mind was Haas basically just gave up on 2021. And they said, we're putting all of our development time and money to the next year's car. So for a team with a smaller budget, they went all in on 2022, believing the quality of the aero and these other pieces will allow them to compete. So when you said they'll have points and it'll be more than 30, I'm hopeful, man. I'm hopeful. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you're right. So what have Has been spending all their money on? So when we look at all the unveiling of the cars that are coming up in, well, it's kind of rumored to be somewhere in February before the first testing, all the teams should have unveiled their cars. There's going to be a couple of obvious things, and I'm not technical enough to know everything about this, so we'll probably just try to stay at the level of technical details of Q trying to explain the new weapons on the cars to James Bond.
I just watched the recent one, by the way. Like this weekend, I just saw it Friday night. It was quite good, actually. And my friend said it wasn't that great, and they're all wrong.
Okay, so one of the things we're going to see is we've got these funky little winglets that are going to be over the wheels. They're not just there to look cool, but again, they're there to essentially help guide the air away from the rear wing. So there's going to be all these different changes now that really, like Brian was saying, the vast majority of the changes to a car will be to help throw the air away in a more kind of consistent way to leave the weight behind you a bit smoother to chop through. And to add to that, I'm not sure how I feel about the next one, but it's the introduction of wheel covers. Now, I like seeing kind of the spokes of a wheel. I think they look really cool. However, the wheel covers that they're going to have to run this year, which again, the reason for this is that apparently air that washes in through a wheel and out through a wheel can be very beneficial to you because it can help generate downforce, but apparently it's a big no-no for the air that you throw out the back. The air coming through the wheels is just going to be ridiculously turbulent. So they're putting these wheel plates on to help reduce that. But I used to have a pair of those on my BMX and I wanted them forever. Like I was like the last kid on the block to get these. Like I'd got the regular spokes on my BMX and like kids were getting these like plates to put over and they just look so cool. So, you know, on one hand, I like the good old fashioned spoked wheels of an F1 car, but something's tugging at the heartstrings that I'm going back to my BMX days here.
No, man, I got to be honest. I like seeing the open wheel approach. When AlphaTauri painted their wheels white this year, the first day I saw it, I was like that Leonardo DiCaprio gif where he snaps his thumb and points at the screen real excitedly. That was me. I was like, yeah, look at that. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the wheel covers, if I'm being totally honest, but if it works to make the racing better, yeah, well, let's do it. I'm not, the cars look beautiful. I know you're about to talk about the ground effect and the wings. You mentioned the winglets. If you go look at a picture between the wings and the swoopiness of the front and the backs to direct the air away and the winglets, it looks like a handlebar mustache. And so I'm just saying there's something very handlebar-y to the whole deal. And the racing better be better because it's not the most aggressive looking car I've ever seen. If it looks like Raleigh Fingers doing some relief pitching for the Seattle Pilots back in '63. Anyway, sorry, back to you, Rob.
No, that's fine. I mean, and you mentioned the wings. I mean, I like the look of the front and the rear wing now. I think they look nice. Obviously, nothing in Formula One is done just for looking nice. Apparently, and I don't know how they work this one out. I mean, this is obviously some highly paid jobs, but the front wings have been shaped the way they are now, apparently, to funnel the air as closely down the side of the car as possible. So rather than just kind of like just spray it out everywhere and say, I don't care, coming through, it's to funnel it down the side of the car. And then it basically seems like it gets caught by the new rear wing, which just launches it into the sky. So now in theory, we're leaving, like you said, this kind of much calmer air in the direct vicinity of the car behind it. So if all of those things come together, then in theory, this car now will chop through the air just as efficiently as it maybe ever did, maybe a little less. I think they've said, well, actually, we'll come to that in a second. But it's also going to leave the air behind it so much cleaner. Now, they're not doing away with DRS, which means that we're going to be in a situation where the cars can now follow much closer for much longer behind and still get that DRS boost. I just don't see, and again, this is just me being so wildly optimistic. I can't see how we see anything but wheel-to-wheel racing. Like even maybe the circuits that we look back over the last few years and go, yeah, that's a little dull. Nothing really happens once they get away from the start. I'm really thinking it's going to happen. And one last thing on the whole kind of the closeness of the racing. So that's all about the car and what it's throwing out behind it. What they've also brought back is the ability for the underside of the car to effectively create suction. I think I was looking at this when we were researching this topic. It was something that was used in the 1980s, but it got banned. It's kind of been brought back, but not fully. And it is basically, instead of having a flat bottom car now, it's going to have these tunnels that run all the way down the underside of the car, which I didn't really understand the science, but it sounds to me like it creates the effect of like a Dyson vacuum cleaner underneath the car and just sucks that bad boy down to the track. So you're going to get a double whammy now. You're not going to be chopping through turbulent air, and your car is more designed to deal with that air anyway. And you've got a Dyson vacuum underneath sucking you down onto the track as well.
My buddy here in Chicago, we'll call him Paulie G, and no, he's not part of the Sopranos. He actually sent me a text a couple weeks ago about how excited he was to have ground effect back in Formula One. So I am curious to see if all this comes together the way they think it will. And you mentioned DRS, and just again, for maybe any newer listeners or casual listeners, drag reduction system, the wing pops open on the straights and allows the airflow to go through as opposed to adding to the downforce. It speeds the car up. It's obviously good in a straight. And the second they tap the brakes, it closes. So when they get to the turns and the corners, they can have the downforce back. And so the DRS will still be there. What I'm curious about in particular, and just looking back at 2021, if you go back to like Monza, the Temple of Speed, where you want as little downforce as possible. It's one of the highest speed tracks there is. And what blows my mind is how skinny those wings are. You can barely even read Honda on the Red Bull car. It's like, I think that says Honda. I'm not sure what it says because it is so tiny, that wing. Everyone runs these tiny, incredibly low downforce wings. So what I don't know, and maybe you do, or we'll find out, is will there be wing differential from the downforce package they put on each week? Would that screw up the air they leave behind? Meaning, if you have one wing type for Monaco or one wing type for Monza, will they be different? Will they be the same? Can you tweak it? I don't know. But to me, 2021, it was like the world's smallest wing I'd ever seen in Monza.
Yeah, I think if we compare it to something like IndyCar, they can completely change aerodynamic packages from race to race. So if it's a twisty turny circuit, they'll put one setup on. If it's one of the super high speed ovals, they can basically strip everything off and put a whole new set on. I'd have to check, but I think Formula One, even though they can change the downforce settings from track to track, I still think everything's got to comply with the overall regulations. So I don't think it's that drastic. So I think the changes that are being introduced for the downforce will be the same. They have said that they're thinking that the top speeds of the cars will come down by a couple of miles per hour because of the better downforce. Because that, like you say, that's the trade-off. If you're being pushed down into the track a bit more, you're going to go slower. And you touched on DRS. When DRS first came out, and anybody that hasn't seen it, you need to watch kind of a car with DRS in action, because when people said that just by moving one piece on a Formula One car, one skinny little wing, if it's up and then you drop it down to allow the air to pass straight through the wing rather than being kind of buffered it up and over. When they tell you, oh yeah, by opening that flap up, you're going to get an extra 14 miles per hour, whatever it is, down the straight, you go, no, it won't. It's just nothing. It's negligible. All you've done is open a little mailbox on the back of the car. But when you see those things, when they're flying down the street, like, Brazil or whatever, and they're flying down and they're within the second, they go across the line, the DRS system kicks in and you can just see it. It's like they just press the turbo button. It's so if we can, again, and we're getting wildly optimistic here, but if we can get cars that can follow each other without having to back off as much, we should therefore see cars being more often inside the DRS detection zone, which means we should be able to see a lot more passes. Because that's just what frustrates me when you've got someone that wants to go on the attack and then you hear the radio message that they've got to conserve tires because tires are overheating. So now they have to back off for 5 or 6 laps while they let everything cool down again. And then they'll go on another attack. And it's like, well, we just lost 5 laps of a Grand Prix now, because you've just told the guy to hold back and just wait for a bit until his tires come back into the zone, which leads us on to the last one, which I'm not really sure I really understand this one, but they do look nicer. So it's Formula One moving to the 18-inch low-profile tires. They look so nice.
They do.
Allegedly, the new compound that they're doing for this is not going to overheat as much when they slide. Well, if the new changes to the car means the car doesn't slide as much anyway, and it now won't overheat when it does slide, well, again, the tires shouldn't be letting go when they're following either. So winding this back 30 minutes to when we were doing our predictions, this is why I'm ridiculously optimistic that this season is going to see some absolutely classic races.
I really hope Pirelli is right and that they bring that technology to road cars, because my winter Pirellis, my Soto Zeros, I got stuck in my driveway last night in an ice storm. Could barely get into the garage, and it's on flat surface. So I'm still waiting on Pirelli to help me out with a road car version. But I agree. I guess I had two questions. The first being, do we know, will every car have a slow button or just Ferrari?
Slow button on, slow button on.
So we need to figure that one out. And then, as I look at 2022, and you talk about the cars, we talk about the idea of the predictions and what we're going to see happen. At 23 races, we heard from Paul last week how difficult it is to get ready for each of these things. The pandemic is still the pandemic. I just hope we have a year nearly as good as 2021. And what I mean by that, you mentioned the tracks that are, historically boring. So Russia at Sochi is normally a boring race. This year, it was one of the most exciting races because of the late rain that came in. And Lando basically almost had his first win. I'm such a nerd. I went back and rewatched the last 8 laps again fairly recently, and I'd recommend anyone else do the same. Great race because of weather. And then Abu Dhabi, which is also normally a boring track, they changed it during the year so we'd have a better finale. It really didn't deliver anything except just weird situations and FIA intervention to make it interesting. Otherwise, Lewis was driving off into the distance and had built up a big lead on Max. So the races which we'd expected to be boring in 2021 weren't, for reasons beyond normal things. So for 2022, I hope the on-track components, not the weather, not the FIA, make the boring races more exciting. And that's my hope. And my New Year's resolution for us all is that we see an amazing 2022 to follow what I think was an epic 2021.
Yeah, it was. And my only reservation, despite the fact that I am ridiculously optimistic, just to play kind of F1 Grinch for a minute, is that the worst would be one team hooks up something inside the new regulations that no one else has kind of figured. Someone happens to, stumble on the secret sauce and they have an unbeatable car, and the others can't do enough in the rest of the season to be able to play catch up, because that's not what you want. You kind of, we're getting a clean slate this year where no one's really, I know some of the teams are going to have the more qualified engineers. Everyone expects that Mercedes, Red Bull are going to come to the party with an epic car, but they're all having to get their arms around these new car setups. The drivers are going to have to do the same as well. The cars are not going to handle the same way. They can do as many simulation runs as they like, but I think the ability to follow a car, if you really can run close for that long, that's going to be something new. So I just hope that we don't get like a car that just disappears into the distance every race, because that would just be
Agreed. And that would defeat the whole purpose of a lot of the changes if someone got there earlier and better. So, oh man, it's going to be a great year. I'm so excited that everyone's going to be here with us to get through the dirty side of the track in 2022. I'd like to say goodbye to Kimmy right now. I know he's a loyal listener. I already played the
Leave me alone, I know what to do.
leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. We've heard he doesn't get the drink. My favorite clip has never been played from Kimmy, and I feel as though we got to play it out as his seat gets taken by another flying Finn and Valtteri.
Claps on steering wheel, yeah.
Gloves and steering wheel. Will they have those in 2022? Should we be expecting people to be?
Claps on steering wheel, yeah.
Yeah, I need my gloves and steering wheel. Tell the bloke I need the gloves and the steering wheel.
I'd love to know what was going on where he's in the car and yet he doesn't feel that his steering wheel is present. I mean,
they actually were pushing him. If you've seen the clip, it's in the Ferrari. No, it's fantastic. They're pushing him down pit lane in the Ferrari. He has no gloves nor steering wheel, and the guy next to him the Paul Harris equivalent, is holding the steering wheel and he's yelling into the team radio, "Tell the bloke I need the steering wheel." And then they give it to him. He goes, "Gloves, gloves." And he's just screaming for a while. And so I will miss Kimi very, very, very much in 2022. But as I said before, and we said already, we don't have to go down it again. Alfa Romeo in good shape with two amazing drivers, or at least a young driver and a highly experienced driver. So we'll see. So it's going to be a great year. Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about what people can expect next week?
Yeah, so next week we're going to be taking a look, as Brian kind of alluded to earlier, we're going to take a little look at the fantasy Formula One and how that's going to work. We've actually had a few people reach out to us and kind of say, "Hey, we've heard you mention that. How does that work?" Because a lot of people are familiar with whatever fantasy sport they play, but kind of interested to jump on board this, probably just so they can beat Brian and I and then rub our faces in it at the end of the season. But, you know,
we promised to shout out, at the very least, shout out the weekly winner. So when you beat us, we will begrudgingly acknowledge your success, make fun of you, and then move on. And if we can ever get this thing off the ground to the right place, we may even give you prizes, but let's not count any chickens before they've hatched. So yes. And then the second thing that we want to do next week is hit a historical driver highlight, and we will hold the driver to the side for a minute. We think we know who it is, but occasionally throughout the season, not just in the off season, we're going to hit some historical drivers, because here in the States, you know, Formula One is growing rapidly, and there's this huge history since 1950 of amazing drivers who have come before and done amazing things. And we want to make sure that everyone has a little bit of appreciation for those they may not have heard of, but who are epic nonetheless. And so we'll hit one next week to kick that off.
Yep. And I think I'm not sure we're going to get it done this week, but we're going to try to do it soon. We're going to get on that note for kind of new listeners, people that are new to the sport. We've got our kind of, I don't want to call it F1 for Dummies, but we're going to do that YouTube series. We said we're going to try and drop a bonus episode of about 10 topics, 5 minutes each. We're going to put one bonus episode out that will be about a 50-minute episode, and then we'll chop that up into 10 bite-sized YouTube videos and throw that out there. So, you know, we don't want to spoon feed the hardened F1 listener, but we are acknowledging that there's some people new to the sport as well. So we're going to try and serve up some content for everyone, but we'll see how that goes.
But as always, from a non-technical, sort of uneducated fan perspective, so we will help you get the bearings, but please don't think we're giving a master class. There's no chance that anyone at Mercedes is going to watch and go, "Oh, interesting, I never thought of that." If anything, it'll be the opposite, but that's okay, because that's what we're about at the Dirty Side. It's about making sure everyone has fun, gets involved, and just really enjoys what I think is the world's greatest sport.
And just looking at the clock here, Brian, we had one thing that we really wanted to try to hit on, which was that every episode so far has been pretty much around the hour, apart from last week with Paul, where we just went on forever. It was a good episode and we got good feedback on it, but it was like an hour and 25, and we're just coming up towards the 50-minute mark. So I think we're doing well here because we're almost at the end. The only thing I would say is you've got to settle on your Sap Stats theme song for that's all. That's your homework this week.
I may go off the grid and come up with my own version. I tried 2 Formula One favorites, and we'll see what we come up with. I would just say thanks to everybody. The reason we're doing this is because we love it. And if no one listens, we're still going to do it. But more importantly, if people do listen, please let us know. And we'd love to hear your questions. We want to make this as much a discussion as possible. So again, on Twitter at F1 Dirty Side. Rob, what's the IG and Facebook?
Facebook and Instagram are both just Dirty Side of the Track. In hindsight, I'm just thinking about this, Brian. Do you think the reason we haven't had an actual driver on here at the moment is because no driver wants to be on the dirty side of the track?
Oh, they love being on the marbles. They love being on the marbles, and you know it.
But yeah, we would actually love to add a regular section on here, which is kind of like a Q&A. So if you throw a question in, we'll answer it. We'll give you a shout out. You can be famous. So yeah, throw us a question and we'll answer it. Other than that, I think we are done this week, Brian.
I would just like to thank everyone for listening. Everyone, be your best. We'll see you in a week when we're going to do better than tonight. Thanks for listening. Good night.